Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. My name is Ilan and I'm joined by my lovely friend, colleague and co-host, Jeremy. How are we?
I'm great, mate. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's a beautiful Friday, Arvo, first day of spring, but when you guys will be listening to this, it'll probably be like the 6th of September or some shit. Anyways, we're going to be speaking about alcohol today, and it's not going to be one of those lectures that are telling you don't drink alcohol, because we all do it. We all enjoy it from time to time. But what we'll be speaking about today specifically will be the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's drinking knowing what we're doing. We're using it as a tool maybe to enhance your night out, but also understanding the potential harms and costs that come with it. So we're not here prescribing anything, but this is all similar to our episodes on pornography and social media. This is just more of an educational perspective. What do you reckon?
Yeah, exactly. Because I'll be my first to put up my hand and say, I love a tipple, especially on a Friday night like tonight, especially when the football's not on this week, right? You know, the country's going to go mad this weekend. I mean,
Just the state of Victoria.
Yeah.
NRL is still on, I think.
NRL's on. AFLW starts tonight as
Correct.
well.
Melbourne Collingwood.
But yeah, the weekend before AFL finals. And I think there'll be a few people indulging in a tipple, and I'll be one of those people. So yeah, it's definitely not an episode to sit here and cancel alcohol, because it's such a part of who we are as Australians and just as people in general, but especially as Australians, it's heavily in our culture. You know, don't need to sit here and harp on about that because we all know that, but I enjoy it. You enjoy it. We enjoy it collectively, which is why there is such a beauty in alcohol and drinking together, because it's such a celebratory thing. It brings us together. But with that in mind, there are many risks and dangers that do come with it that we do want to speak about, because we've all been there on nights out where it has gotten the better of us and it's not fun. And maybe we've done that a few too many times as well in the past. And yeah, it just doesn't end well. So if we can help people not get to that stage, then that's great.
Our job is done essentially in that regard. That's what we'd be hoping to illuminate. Just interesting, because in Australia, alcohol is ingrained in our kind of social fabric, in our culture, in our advertisements, in our sponsorships.
Yeah.
It is everywhere you look. It's a key staple of for example, our going out culture. You know, having a designated driver is like a thing to have, because you don't want to obviously drink and drive because of the risks involved, and obviously because it's illegal. But something I once heard, and this is really interesting, which is if people knew back maybe 1,000 years ago, hundreds of years ago, how bad alcohol was, that it would be prohibited just like drugs are. And I started thinking about it, and it's kind of true, because they did try to outlaw alcohol back like 100 years ago in the US, the Prohibition era. And similar to the war on drugs, it just didn't work, because people still went into these little speakeasy bars underground, had their bourbon, their liquor, their rum, and people still wanted it. But it's just interesting how like it's been like a divisive thing over the course of history.
Divisive. Yeah, I would say divisive, but in the same sense, it's probably
divisive in the sense that they tried to stamp it out. So you can't stamp out alcohol.
Yeah.
You remember the World Cup in Qatar? So many people were pissed off because they couldn't, if they could drink, it'd be limited amounts and it would be a lot of money.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny, that one.
Exactly. But yeah, like you said, it's the one drug essentially that, you know, we can have so freely. And the fact of the matter is, it's probably the most dangerous of them all. And because of how much we consume of it, how excessively we consume of it, it's the most toxic drug out of all of them. And there's evidence to back that one up.
Yeah, there was an Australian study, I think, about last year or the year before, which examined 22 drugs and measured risk to individuals as well as damage to society. And they found that alcohol causes more overall harm to the community than any other drug, including crystal methamphetamine, which is ice, and heroin. And this study involved like licit and illicit drugs.
Yeah.
What I find interesting there is everyone has been warned about the dangers of those Class A drugs that are incredibly, damaging and catastrophic for you, which is things like crystal methamphetamine and heroin. But alcohol, the way our culture promotes it is very interesting, because our culture will never promote illicit drugs, full stop, right? It's what's illegal isn't going to be promoted. But with alcohol, I think the reason it's in this study it's considered the most dangerous is because it's the most accessible.
Yeah.
When a culture promotes something, more people are going to buy it.
Yeah.
And there's tons of science that shows alcohol is one of the leading causes of cancer, of especially like gastrointestinal cancers,
Liver cancers.
failures. Can increase blood pressure. It has just a myriad of health issues associated with it, just like smoking cigarettes, just like having a poor diet.
Yeah.
So it's something to note there about that study. So with that in mind, and understanding how dangerous it is, you're not going out there and drinking and saying, you know what, I'm drinking this glass of wine because it has brilliant antioxidants and it's good for me. You know that there's a risk to everything you drink, but you do like a cost-benefit analysis in your head at the time of your drinking. If you've got a dinner or you're on a date and you want a bit of a social lubricant, and we'll get to why alcohol is a social lubricant, you run a cost-benefit analysis of, okay, is my night going to be enhanced if I have a little bit of alcohol tonight? Or is the risk of me contracting some sort of disease in 30 years going to outweigh that? And I think we all do those implicit cost-benefit analysis in our heads.
Yes, but I think people also don't go into whether it's drugs, whether it's poor diet, whether it's alcohol, with the mindset that they will get addicted to it and they will do it excessively. It's just one of those things that, you know, if you fall into the trap of enjoying it and enjoying the feels and the behaviors of yourself on it, especially if you might have an addictive personality, then those risks do turn and present themselves. But no one goes out there drinking for the sake of wanting to be addicted. I think that's also important to keep in mind. But you're right, we do run those pros and cons in our mind, those cost-benefit analyses in our head. I don't think I did so when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, when I was quite new to drinking.
Well, are you sure? Because think about the peer pressure. You're not doing it like an Excel spreadsheet saying the good and the bad, but in your head you're thinking, all right, the boys are going out tonight, or rather, let's say you were in a group of friends that had there was peer pressure.
Yeah.
Part of you saying, well, if I don't drink, that means will I be ridiculed? Will I be bullied? Will I not be invited to future things?
True.
So you're doing like implicitly.
True. Yeah, you're right. I think that, that does go for a pro and con spreadsheet in your mind. Yeah, I would say that's probably more so where my mind was at in terms of what I was thinking about, rather than like me getting sick or me getting addicted to alcohol, because I knew that for me personally, I wasn't at that level of love towards the feelings of alcohol that I would get to that level. But you're exactly right. I would always be thinking about how others would perceive me had I not been drinking alongside them. And that still happens today. And it happens at parties. It happens at even like, you know, even if you've gone out for a few drinks with people, but you've just had one, right? Or just two, and they're implying that they want another one, and you want, and like, you know, they want another one with you. It's hard to be that person to be like, you know what, like one or two, like that's enough for me tonight. And it's not because like I don't want to pay for another drink. It's just because I don't feel like it. Like I'd rather just not, you know, there's no need to have another one if I'm comfortable with just the one or two. And I find like those are also the moments where the person you are with or the group that you're with might, you know, it kind of makes the situation it can make it a bit awkward if they want that drink and they were hoping that you would want that drink with them, and you kind of acting like the Debbie Downer and being like, oh nah, like, you know, I'd rather not. I feel like it kind of dampens the mood sometimes, which is a little bit sometimes awkward to navigate. But if it's with the right people, they'll respect it. You know, they'll you know, see you in that moment and be like, you know what, like fair enough. And if they really want that other drink, they'll have that other drink.
You can always say, look, I've just had too much. I'm not feeling well. Like, what's wrong with saying that? No, absolutely nothing. It's your body.
Saying that, but then again, nothing wrong with not saying that either. Nothing wrong with just being honest and saying, just don't want one, mate. It's fine. And like, you don't need to make excuses for saying that I'm feeling sick or whatever. It should be fine and normal in our culture to just say, just not feeling it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that culturally, again, we promote alcohol because it's just always been a thing in Australia, as it is in so many other cultures, right? Alcohol's always been like a major, major thing when it comes to any sort of hazing ritual. Like you look at college cultures in the US,
Yeah,
alcohol's a massive thing there. It's almost how you earn your stripes in your sorority and whatnot.
exactly. It becomes like a status thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much the person can drink, and if they can master the initiation tests that involve drinking, then they're going to be part of the crew, part of the frat, part of the sorority, whatever it might be. And
I think then in your head, it's like, again, you're making those judgment calls of like, how much do you rank alcohol as something that's important to you? Like, is it something that you are vehemently against and you don't want to drink at all? Like, for example, people from a religious point of view are forbidden to drink alcohol. But the interesting thing about alcohol is if you truly don't like it, there shouldn't be an obligation for you to want to like it. It's not good for you. You know what I mean? It's not like it's going to absolutely, make you into a better person or a more confident person. It might lower inhibition, and we'll speak about that next. But if you're great without alcohol, there's no reason why you need to add it to your life. If it's something you enjoy doing and you do it in a safe amount, again, do as you will. We all do it. Like, we have fun with it. But I think after the last few years, after reaching like the legal age of drinking, you kind of figure out your limits.
yeah, exactly. You figure out your limits, but I think I can say for myself, and you can probably agree with me that, when we were 18, 19 and clubs were new, bars were new to us, drinking was new to us, there were like many weekends when we would just be, binge drinking on a night out in the club. It was just what we did. It was all very new to us, but you soon realize that doesn't really become fun or seem fun anymore sometimes. I guess when it's done in excess and you feel really crap the next day as well. But what is hard is being that maybe that first person in the group to actually voice that and say, this isn't great, because you fear that it can result in ridicule or potential bullying or getting berated for not choosing to drink and, being called that Debbie Downer. But, I really urge people to be that one to say that, if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Don't do it for the sake of other people, because there's nothing worse than abiding by peer pressure and by going with the flow with peer pressure. And ultimately, I think that's a way that you will probably be disrespected in the long term. Because if people see you as someone that does go against the grain, or rather just respects themselves and their values and opinions, in the moment that, you might be called that Debbie Downer, but it's passing and people will respect you in the long term for holding your opinions true.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and at the same time, you're not telling people that
What
friend.
to do. You're not telling them what to do.
Yeah, you're saying like, me personally, I'm not keen to go out for a big one tonight, but you guys have your fun, like just not for me. It's funny. I had a chat with my older brother. He's overseas at the moment, and he's mentioned a really good point like a month ago. And if he's listening to this, it'll be kind of funny if he does remember this convo. But he mentioned that, he used to really enjoy that element of going out a lot. And now, like, he loves being able to wake up on a Sunday morning and not be hungover. And I remember that with me personally, I feel like I reached that age like 2 years ago. I'd hate, like, for me, the feeling, no one enjoys being hungover, but the idea of going out on a Saturday night till 3, 4 in the morning, unless it's a really, really special occasion.
Yeah.
I just wanted to have my Sundays free, because that Saturday night or even a Friday night where you go out, you can just have a massive impact. I just think, I don't know if it's a matter of maturity. Do you think it is? Like, people will like grow out of like that. And I don't want to call it partying, because partying is very different from like binge drinking.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, I don't think, look, you're right. It coincides with partying a lot of the time, because we generally think that it goes hand in hand, partying and drinking and all of that. But you're right, it is different, because I like to party, you like to party, we like to party, but the drinking comes in moderation. And I think I really enjoy my times drinking when I feel like there's a time and place for it, when there's maybe something to celebrate in particular, or if I haven't had the experience of drinking in a long time, and there's a particular event or reason for me wanting to indulge in a few drinks. When it's like that, I feel like it becomes a pretty healthy relationship. When it's excessive and just doing it for the sake of it, for the sake of going to the pub every week, the sake of going to a bar every weekend because, you know, God forbid you sat home on a Saturday night and actually had a decent, you know, dinner or downtime with your mate rather than going to the pub. It's just like the thing that is promoted, and it's the easy option to just get out and be seen doing that, isn't it? But I don't think it's a maturity thing. I think it's just a matter of realizing it's just might not be fun for you anymore. Simply that, just not that fun anymore to just get absolutely mortal and feel crap about it the next day. And I think it's just common to reach that mindset around the age of like your mid-20s, around like what we're at now, because you've just got other things going on, whether it's big work commitments, whether it's big university commitments, whatever it might be. You would much prefer indulging in those commitments, feeling good about yourself rather than feeling absolutely crap in those moments.
Well, it's interesting the point you made there about commitments. I remember Jordan Peterson once made like a really, really interesting point, which is he asked, like someone once asked him, you know, why do so many people do drugs, or why do so many people drink alcohol and are alcoholics? And his answer is, why isn't everyone an alcoholic all the time? And it's because of responsibilities. It's that thing in the back of your head that's saying that if I'm completely hungover and that disrupts my function at work or my family life, what do I value more? The high, the temporary high of getting that massive dopamine flux, lowered inhibition when I'm drinking and feeling happy and, you know, out and about, or, you know, that quickly turns into long-term regret.
Yeah.
And he made a really good point, which is you got to have things in your life that will be a barrier to the potential incentive to want to drink or do like drugs that do, inhibit your functional capacities at work or with your family, with your friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned that point there about inhibitions and feeling happy when you're drinking. And yeah, those are reasons why we like to indulge in it, because it makes us feel good, especially with a couple. It, you know, calms us. It makes us just feel a little bit more jovial. Why is that the case?
Well, it makes it, I think on one hand, it lowers our inhibition. So from a neurological effect, what it does, and if you're drinking alcohol, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be completely, did a bit of research on it literally a few days ago, even before we knew we were going to record this episode. But essentially, it lowers your inhibition. So you're more willing to do crazy things. You're willing to do things that you wouldn't generally do because you're almost numb to the consequences. You're not actually that concerned. You're more confident. That's why you see so many fights happen. People overestimate who they can take on in a punch-up, and unfortunately, it results in either one or both of them getting incredibly hurt, sometimes even killed. It results in risk-taking behaviors like driving when you shouldn't be. That's why there's been such mass advertisement campaigns from the TAC, Transport Accident Commission, because drinking and driving, as they all say, you are a bloody idiot. If you drink and drive, you're a bloody idiot. And
that was peak football when that was the main sponsor of Collingwood's Guernsey, I'm pretty sure.
I thought it was Essendon.
Nah, definitely Collingwood.
But it's true, right? You want to understand. So if you are, look, there's another thing to make a mental note of. If you're someone that is generally speaking a person who's disinhibited, like you will do things that are a bit more riskier than usual, is it worth asking yourself? And I'm not prescribing this, but it's more so just a mental thought, which is if I'm able to do risky things when I'm sober, what am I going to be like when I've drunk more? Because I'll be honest, we've got friends that are pretty, confident individuals. They'll do risky things, not necessarily like bad things or dangerous things that put their life in danger. But when they drink, they're even more like heightened. They're way more able to do things that they wouldn't necessarily do. And the whole thing about, people drink on first dates because it settles the nerves.
It's a social lubricant, essentially.
Yeah, and I love that term. It really is a social lubricant. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing constantly, right?
No, I think it can be a great thing
Because
for people.
for example, after this, I'm going to get a coffee, right? Or I'll drink a tea because I want the caffeine just to keep me a bit more awake. So I'm drinking something because I enjoy the taste of it,
Yeah.
but I also like the feeling of it because I'm hoping that it will optimize me for the day. I don't think it's a bad thing to say, hey, honestly, I like to drink alcohol because it does relax me. And in social situations, that's sometimes what I need.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the worst thing to do.
Exactly. I think it's perfectly fine to admit, like you said, that you enjoy a bit of a drink to, quell the nerves and lower those anxiety levels before something like a first date, because those can be quite anxiety inducing moments. And that's probably a reason why people choose to go to a bar as a first date. One, because it's, you get the benefits of feeling a little bit more calmer by indulging in a drink or two. And two, it's just a great way where you can come together with someone in an environment that doesn't seem too formal. Like, it's pretty easygoing, it's pretty casual. You might be sitting at a bar face to face to one another or side by side. There might be music around, and these are I think some of the great benefits of alcohol and drinking, because it does bring people together, and it can really dumb down moments that might feel essentially heightened normally. And I don't think it's something that we should shy away from, to be like, nah, you know what, you should just toughen up and increase your social skills and not rely on it. Because why is that harmful to just indulge in one or two and have the benefits of that? I don't think it's bad. I think it only gets bad when you indulge in it more than that, and when you really just rely on it without backing yourself as to who you are in social circumstances.
So yeah, great point. You're essentially trying to find the limit to where am I using this as a genuine vice where I have to rely on it on everyday things.
Yeah.
Or where am I using it just to enhance something? I could probably live without it, but it just makes the night a bit better. And I thought about it as well. A lot of men have trouble speaking up and opening up about things that are going on. And sometimes all it takes is one mate saying, do you want to go for a beer and just chat? And it's not that individual may have never said anything if they didn't go to a bar and have like a beer or a wine or whatever. But that could be just the catalyst. Beer or any sort of alcohol lower your inhibition, and what comes next might be just an outpouring of emotion of things that have been really kept close to someone's chest. And I think if we're let's not necessarily get rid of the drinking culture in Australia, maybe increase the awareness if we can. But use it to your advantage, knowing that, for example, there's a mental health crisis in men, and knowing that there's massive barriers for men being able to open up. Why not do things that men relate to, such as going out for a drink? And maybe that's the catalyst, that's the vehicle that allows men to feel safe and comfortable to open up. So I think it's knowing how to it's like we said with social media, know how to optimize any tool. And I think that's going to be the biggest truism with alcohol as well. If you know that you can drink it in little amounts and it optimizes your night by 5-10%, and it's not a vice that you use every day,
that's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And beautiful point there about, men in the bar and having a drink to potentially kickstart and be that catalyst for a deep and meaningful conversation. Because so often we hear that, like, as men, we should move away from that and not just go to the bars and hang out there, which, there's a time and place for everything. We definitely should encourage to do more things outside of those settings. But you're exactly right. If it means that it's a place of comfort for someone and they're willing to open up to you in an environment like that versus just sitting on the couch at home or sitting across the table having dinner to one another, do it. Go for it. Use that bar to your advantage and just have a beer with one another. It brings people together, and there's no harm in admitting that. I enjoy it, you enjoy it, and there's no reason why we shouldn't steer away from that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And look, there's no denying that when you do drink a lot, you're probably going to have a hangover. Me and you have both been there. And there's like this sort of anxiety. What's it called? Hangxiety?
Hangxiety, yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
The colloquial term for feeling absolutely disheveled the next day. Just hangxiety. Yeah, well, we've all been there, like you said, and it's just something that I don't really like to enjoy doing unless within reason. Like I said, if I really want to enjoy a few more drinks than normal, but within reason for an occasion or a celebratory event, or just for like a circumstance where I might be going out with a big group of my mates and we hadn't done it in a while, it's all within reason. But again, it's just about managing what you might be feeling the next day and, maybe helping yourself so that you don't feel that anxiety the next day. So one thing that I like to do is, have Hydrolyte. It's a very easy fix, I feel, for because the one thing about alcohol is that it essentially dehydrates you. You can have quite a few drinks, and often I forget to drink water like whilst I'm having a few drinks on a night out, and that's something that we should be doing because we're essentially dehydrating ourselves by filling ourselves up with all this toxicity from the alcohol. But the Hydrolyte is a really helpful fix to have both before and after a night out or a big night out, along with good diet, nutrition, having something substantial to eat prior, trying to eat something during the night if you can, but if not, definitely before, and trying to not indulge in crappy food afterwards as well.
Oh, come on. There's nothing that beats, Macca's or souvlaki or...
Honestly, mate.
At 1 a.m. when you've had a big night, this is back, back in the heyday a few years ago when I liked going out to like 2 or 3 in the morning. Not that I like doing it now. Actually, I don't like doing it now at all, to be honest. But nothing was better than like finishing a night with like some greasy fast food.
Zinger box.
Yeah, like that's something that's all I looked forward to sometimes during the...
No.
If it was a bad night out, you were just thinking, yeah, at least I can demolish a Zinger box or a Big Mac or a souvlaki.
They do go down well. I have to say though, like I've never been one to indulge in those after a night out. Occasionally, yeah, if the whole group is doing it, but I might get some chippies, but getting a big feed with the burgers and the nuggets and all of that, like I honestly just felt like a bit sick if my head was already not in a good way and I'm indulging in that afterwards. Like I'd rather just go home, have like a piece of toast with some peanut butter or something, or some Vegemite, get the salt back in, have a Hydrolyte, wake up the next day. I felt like that was a better recipe for me.
And that's Jeremy's hangover routine. And honestly, you find what works for you. But look, there's going to be times in your life where you are hungover and you may have underestimated how much you drank. There's going to be nights where you might think, yeah, you know what, I probably will be hungover tomorrow. I don't care. But there'll be nights also where you don't plan on it and you end up being hungover. And probably one of the best things that's ever helped me is making sure that my sleep the next day is back to normal and that my wake up is as regular as it has to be. And I'm not going to restate your points about the kind of hydration. That's all kind of obvious points. But if you've got things like a headache, take a Panadol. But try and get some exercise as soon as you wake up, if you can. Even if it's a bit of sunlight exposure, even a little bit of
going for a walk,
getting the legs moving and just trying to resume your day. But the whole thing about anxiety, I think we glossed over it a little bit, but you oftentimes have this dopamine dump the next day. You had such a big high the night before, you're having, great time, loving life. And then all of a sudden it's like a sugar crash.
Yeah.
So that sort of sugar crash, dopamine crash that you will be experiencing the next day, you will be feeling worse than you usually do generally. And it's easy to convince yourself that you're depressed or you're anxious, and you start looking at the things in your life and you just feel empty, you feel sad. I think it's really important to remember that there's a neurological component there. You're not a bad person. Just because you may have texted the wrong person, you texted your ex that night when you shouldn't have, or you said something stupid to your mates, or you did something that you would just regret, you're not a bad person. I think the reason you're feeling shit as well is just because you are having and experiencing that dopamine, that alcohol withdrawal. That's what a hangover is, because alcohol is a drug. Once you start feeling a hangover, that's essentially the alcohol withdrawal effects. That's why people say if you want to get rid of hangovers, drink more. Don't do that though, because...
Poor advice. But one thing I like to do the next day, if we can, if it's a casual Sunday and, there might not be those commitments the next day, is get around with my friends that I was with on that night out. Like something we like
getting
to
a
do.
breakfast or something.
Yeah, getting
that's
like
great.
a brekkie the next day together, or a coffee, or just a walk, or even just sitting around with each other and, you know, like at home or whatever, and just debriefing the night. And that's a really nice way to, I guess, bring yourself back to where you were, like essentially before the night started. Because like you said, after that next day comes and, you know, you've experienced that crash and you're alone, like, yeah, you really do feel a little bit down in the dumps sometimes. So getting around your friends again is a really nice way to, I guess, build up that moment and to help yourself in that moment. But also as important is realizing that, you know, there are tips that we can put in place on the nights out to, you know, maybe distract others from the fact that we might not want to drink, or we might not want to drink as much as they want to drink. So what are some of those tips that you reckon people can implement to their lives if they want to be in those social circumstances, but not necessarily have as big as a night as everyone else might want to be having?
I think the best advice is following those of pregnant women who don't want to tell anyone that they're pregnant yet, but obviously don't want to be drinking. So I think having a drink in your hand that looks a bit like alcohol but isn't, you know, like a G&T, people can't really tell the difference.
Yeah, just some soda with some ice.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
A lime inside.
I think also just I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this, but personally, like for the last few years, if I don't want to drink, I don't feel like I need to justify it to people. Yeah. I don't really care, because what I do is what I do and what you do is what you do, and that's fine. I'm not going to encroach on your thing and you won't encroach on mine. But I suppose I think the biggest thing about alcohol for me personally, and I think this is a common thing, is the whole idea of the social lubricant. And I think over the last few years, I've just tried to develop social skills where I'm confident in myself as it is. Why would I need alcohol to try and make me, you know, do something nerve-wracking, you know, say something, you know, approach a difficult situation? Not that I've ever really needed to use it, but my realization there is I'm still the same person addressing the exact same thing, whether I was drunk or sober. And I honestly think that with things like approaching nerve-wracking situations, it's great to build your distress tolerance, and drinking isn't going to solve that for you. Again, that's not to say you can't have a bit of fun, but if you're using it as a vice where you constantly need to rely on it in order to do more things that might threaten your self-esteem, like asking a girl out, like, I mean, there's a time and place for it. I'm not saying it's not necessary, but it's probably good and beneficial just from a pure, you know, professional or personal development standpoint to get yourself to the point where you are confident, where you don't need an extra substance to try and rely on, like a performance enhancement drug.
Yeah, I agree. So it's realizing what are those things that make you feel comfortable in those moments, right? So maybe it is just having that other drink in your hand to feel like maybe you're just fitting in, because sometimes that's what we just want to do as humans, is to just fit in.
Can I ask you a question? When you go out with friends to a pub, and I mean to just get dinner or something, and you're having drinks and stuff, you're not going to be drunk after one standard unless you've got an empty stomach. But my point is, you're enjoying the company around you. It doesn't really matter. Like, you could have gone for dinner somewhere else, not had a drink, and you still enjoy yourself.
Of course, but I'm speaking more about parties. Like when you're at a party and everyone's drinking around you, and you actually don't want to drink. Those moments are different to just going out for a dinner. Like,
okay, you should have specified that, mate.
You're out drinking. Well, everyone's out drinking. You're at a party, and people are always coming up to you and asking, "You're not drinking? Oh my God, what's going on? Like, you're not drinking? You're not drinking?" It's very easy to just say, you know, stand up, be stoic, and just say, "Yep, not drinking." Like, because that can kind of create a bit of awkwardness maybe in the situation, make you seem like a bit of a
You think you're better than me? You think you're better than me? You're not drinking?
Exactly. Kind of pedestalizing yourself. So these are just moments that I think are just made easier by potentially just having a drink in your hand. That's a non-alcoholic drink, just to avoid those questions. That's why I think it's a great tip for people to implement, is to just have that non-alcoholic drink in hand to avoid all of those factors that I've just mentioned. Maybe also coming to the party a little bit later, perhaps, where people are already indulging in what's going on. They're not too focused on the people around them. Rather, they're just focusing on, themselves and having a good time. So that's another factor that can help. And also, I guess, maybe making a time for yourself to leave that party when you know that the night might be wrapping up, because there's nothing worse than, being the designated driver for everyone that's been drinking and people relying on you to take them home, essentially, when you don't want to do that. You shouldn't have to cop the effort of doing all the trips after the night out just because you're the one that isn't drinking. There's an element of like time and place and being kind-hearted and going out of your way to do things. Obviously for your mates you might, but like for other people that might be tagging along, there's no harm in saying no, So I think maybe making not an escape plan, but like a time for you to leave that's appropriate.
Some Ocean's 11-esque escape plan, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, sure. I think that's true. It's not something I've actually thought about too much. And I think that's maybe just, I might be in that state of mind where I think it's not a big deal, but I know a lot of others might be really concerned and might have this concern that what are they going to be perceived as if they're not drinking at a party.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe I've been I wouldn't call myself arrogant, but maybe I just have underestimated it, because you put a bit of effort into that aspect of explaining it. And I don't know, have you ever felt like that?
Definitely. Yeah, especially not as much now, because like 23 years old, I feel like people kind of understand what's going on in people's lives, like whether it is those academic commitments or weekend commitments. But when you're 20, 21, and you're just going out having a good time and life's pretty easy for you potentially, of course I was feeling that, and other people were feeling that too. So these are just some tips that hopefully people can take on board, and if it works for them, fantastic.
Awesome. I think this is probably a lovely way to wrap up the episode. I think in summary, something that we're in unison agreement on is that alcohol, we know, is not good for us. We know that it has some fun elements to it when you know how to optimize it for your benefit, but it's also very crucial to be aware of its risks and harms and understanding how we can fit alcohol in our lives. If we don't like it at all and don't want to drink, that's fine. If you like it a lot and you find that it's becoming a vice that does impair your day to day, I think that's the time where maybe seeking professional help is not the worst idea.
Exactly.
And I think meeting in the middle in moderation is usually the key with these things. Probably lower end of moderation, because alcohol is quite bad for you. But let's be honest, we live once and life is meant to be enjoyed. And if drinking a little bit is something that you enjoy doing, why get rid of it?
Exactly. Alrighty. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful week. And if you enjoyed this episode, chuck it a like, chuck us a follow, share it if you will. And we hope we see you next time.
Ciao.